Welcome to In Three Poems. Our featured guest today is Daniel Lurie. I'm your host, David J. Bauman. Daniel is a writer, editor, and educator from Eastern Montana. He holds an MFA from the University of Ohio. Daniel writes about the environment, Judaism, rural life, gentrification, and grief, and his work has appeared or is forthcoming in literary journals and magazines like Iowa Review, Swamp Pink, Poetry Northwest, Gulf Coast, and CutBank, among many others. He's the co-founder and co-editor of Outskirts Literary Journal. He served as the 2025 to 2026 Ronald Wallace Poetry Fellow at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and is a current Wallace Stegner Fellow at Stanford University. I'm talking with Daniel Lurie today. Man, your output this last year, 25 and 26, I was telling you before we started recording that I went through a period of time where I was just submitting constantly. Lately, I've sort of been in more creative mode, a little bit of editing mode, and obviously doing other things like this podcast. But I haven't been in submission mode for a while. Do you find it works like that for you? Like you're in creative mode and then submission mode, or do you kind of find time throughout your clock or calendar to do a little bit of each?
I feel like you kind of just get these spurts. And I think it helps when you're actively working on, a project like you're talking about. So I've been working on my book all through grad school, starting in 21 to now. And yeah, so there's definitely the creative spurts for it. And then I'm just going to sit down and I'm just going to submit these 20 packets. And then I'm not going to look at submittable and I'm not going to think about it until those next 20 or something go out. So yeah, it's definitely, I feel like it's those spurts, but there'll be a few, a couple of contests or something like that where, I'll throw a packet out or, I don't want to miss something like that.
So you've avoided sitting and watching submittable to see if it goes from blue to green or anything?
I mean, I'll check it once in a while. I have the, the big ones out right now. Like, the Paris Review just put my, my packet into progress. And I'm like, oh, cool. I'll hear back in a year or 15 months or something.
Yeah. And it'll be a no or something. Yeah.
Yeah. But it can be, a killer to really just sit there and, search through it. You can really get sucked into that whole sort of process.
And then when you have to withdraw from a place that is on your dream list. So what kind of advice do you have then for people who are submitting?
I had a mentor who told me the standard 100 rejections a year. Last year, I think I had somewhere near 160. This year, I'm already sitting at 70 something. A lot of it is a numbers game. It's such a subjective process when the editors read your work. It's not that they hate it. So it's really just finding journals, places that you love, that you vibe with when you send it out. And then the other thing with it too is just don't ever write yourself off. I've sent packets to places that I'm probably not going to get in, but I've been surprised, and it can be such a great experience, especially for your self-worth, to be like, I'm just going to go send these to a place that has a 0.01 acceptance rate.
Right.
So,
and that helps me with editing too. If I know I want to send it there, then before I send, I'm taking one last really good look at this, Is this really ready to go? Because now I'm being serious. Not that I wasn't serious originally, but I think I love what you said about sending it to places that you love. I've told people some of the best advice given to me was if you don't like reading the poems at a particular magazine, why would you send your stuff there?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But like you said, a lot of it too is the numbers game. And it's better to...
full-blown numbers game. I've sent stuff out to judges before and my work hasn't even made it to the judge. I've had work go in front of judges where I don't write anywhere near, their sort of style, and they ended up picking work. Also, there's no shortage of just incredible literary journals that are out there. Yeah. So you can be picky. You can really be picky with it.
Yeah, and really these articles that come up about, poetry is dying, and it's we're kind of in a golden age, really.
We really are. Yeah.
We are not. There are so many opportunities and good opportunities. And that's part of too on this podcast where I try to do a variety of people. I mean, we're only in season 2, but I've got season 3 pretty much planned out. And so people who I'm talking to now, we're already planning for next year in season season 4 in the spring. But I try to do a variety because there are people who aren't academic poets and people who are. I don't have an MFA. My master's work is in library and information science. And I thought, well, so was Philip Larkin's, But everybody's circumstances are a little different. And so I'll have some academics, some non-academics, some people who have not yet published their first book. And I try to have some people that are maybe local that I've met at a reading or maybe met in Pittsburgh at a reading or something, but also make myself be brave enough to just reach out to somebody I've never talked to before and say, hey, do you want to be on this podcast that you've never heard of yet? But yeah, I do. Golden age is probably totally true.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, more than ever as voices, especially that have been suppressed or really not let into, we're going to call the canon or the sort of platform that we're on. There's so many incredible voices out there. Young poets are incredible. I'm always inspired by my students or just young poets that I see in general, which feels weird to say young poets. I mean, I'm not super old, but.
Well, to me, you're a whippersnapper. No, you're not.
But I mean, poetry is not dying. I mean, you can cut the NEA, you can cut any of these things, and we're still going to be here. There's a reason why it's been around for thousands and thousands of years.
Right. And part of the fun of doing this is that we hook into some of the original oratory of it, heard out loud, and they're just, I think, meant to, however you do it, come off the page. In last season, Monica Prince, she does performance poetry, but also that is so intricately edited and researched. Just beautiful. There's such a variety of ways to write and perform poetry as well. So part of the fun of this whole thing is that I get to read the first poem when we do these.
That's perfect. That's preferred.
And you let me choose one of yours. This was in the Shore Poetry. Was it 2025?
Yeah,
just this year.
Sounds right.
And as a dad, I have a hard time reading this sometimes, so I'll do my best to hold it together. I'm just going to jump in and read it, and then I'll ask you about it afterwards. How's that? Is that okay?
That sounds great.
Okay. It's a letter I wish my father wrote from Eastern Montana. I thought I'd write to you when I got back from the underpass, smoked a few cigarettes, flicked them at the trains. When I returned to the house, your mom had fallen. I found her in that damn egg yolk kitchen, half-mixed curdled milk and flour on the counter. The nurse made a house call, said she only needed a few stitches. When our conversation dropped a few weeks ago, I wondered if your mountains cut the signal. I've got the 77 up on blocks, but I can't bring myself to work on it. The plow's still leaking fluids, spark plugs in the tin where you left them. I know you think you hate country, but I smile thinking about you, mouthing Johnny Cash last time you were here. Everything is muddy right now. Sour leaves and sweet rot. The neighbors finally cut down the shattered cottonwood from that storm last year. I still shovel dog shit out of the yard. Looks like the levee is going to pass. So we'll pay for something we'll never see. Talk about what isn't said. I mean, wow. I mean, there's so much in poetry that I've said before that it's not just what's in the line, but what's between the lines. What's in the caesuras and the pauses in the middle.
Absolutely. I mean, there's this whole thing is, what isn't said. Letter, I wish. And so it's there's just something that's so alluring about the epistolary form. It's something of it allows you to wander. It allows you to really, yammer on if you want to, and long and kind of seek in a way that maybe other forms don't allow you to. And also contain and capture a voice. And that's really what this poem is trying to do. What would it sound like if the speaker's father was how they wanted them to be, to say what they wanted them to say?
And yet, at the same time, the speaker's father is really still being evasive even in the letter. So it's like you think, if he's this evasive in the letter, how must this have been for the speaker in real life? And because I know personally, my dad, I have a poem about him where, like, one of our most intimate moments was me as a kid after the car broke down at my Uncle Bob's farm, and I'm sitting there, helping to hold something while he's working at something under the hood. And like that, where he never said anything to me other than
hold the flashlight.
hold the flashlight kind of thing. But at the end of it, he did say, I couldn't have done it without you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, my dad never said stuff like that. So,
Right.
so that was a huge, huge moment. But here, like even in the writing, there's this series of evasions, I thought I'd write to you when I got back from the underpass. Then there's the whole, when I returned to the house and your mom had fallen and the nurse saying she only needed a few stitches. But you get the feeling that, well, he must have just left after that, because it skips to the evasion of when our conversation dropped a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the evasion of saying, I thought maybe it was your signal, which kind of has the dad not taking responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought maybe you had a bad signal with the mountain there. And there's just a weight, a truckload of feeling going along with what isn't said. And then the evasion of, yeah, I got the car up on, the kind of holding the flashlight kind of talk. Like we said.
Yeah. So much of my work measures or tries to examine expression or lack thereof of masculinity, especially in rural spaces. Thinking about the stereotypes of that and why there's stereotypes and what sort of representations of masculinity I had growing up in these spaces. And so I very much relate to that almost said, form of tenderness there. Like, I thought I'd write to you when I got back from the underpass. So thinking about the sun, and then later in there, the vehicle up on blocks, we worked on this together. So saying to you, I couldn't have done this without you, is that form of tenderness, is that form of appreciation, but it needs to be said with other language.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the movie Gran Torino?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I used that in a college linguistics course as when we were doing research about men, masculinity, and language.
Absolutely.
That whole scene in the barber shop where he's trying to teach the kid how to talk like a man, and then the kid goes too far. And he's got to walk it down and tell the other guy to put the gun down and all of that. But I think a lot of my life, I just thought a lot of guys I went to school with were just jerks and assholes. Mm-hmm. And it surprised me studying some linguistics and thinking about my own dad and whatnot, and how he and I came around. And I think it's funny, I find myself now as the youngest of 6 kids having to defend my 93-year-old dad, saying, it's like, I don't want to make excuses for him.
No.
But I also know, growing up for him, rurally 13 kids in a farm in an area called Croak Hollow, there wasn't, that whole time frame he came from, there wasn't such a thing as, or at least not a lot of examples of intimacy between fathers and sons, that kind of thing. And the fact that he tries at all, is a big deal.
It definitely, those poems really that not, talking about mine or those ones, but those ones that reach for something, I think are so, powerful, especially when we're looking at gender or something like that. I'm always so taken, especially by, the father-son relationship, which just shows the sort of complications. My father was a deeply complicated person.
And I think of, the Winter Sundays poem, those Winter Sundays.
Yes. Yeah.
It captures that too,
Yeah, absolutely. Getting the horse, the house warmed for the rest of the family before
polishing my shoes, and I didn't even give a thought to it.
Yeah.
And of course, all of that can go too far and maybe excuse abuse or neglect.
Absolutely.
And of course, that's not at all what I mean to do. But when you can recognize that somebody trying to do something with where they came from, and I think what's so heartbreaking about this is you can see this dad in his way trying. Mm-hmm. But the killer is in the fact that in the title is Letter I Wish My Father Wrote. Mm. That even as distant and things not being said and things said in between is there, that this never really happened. And you have that phrase that, referring to taxes and the dike levy system or whatever, but so we'll pay for something we'll never see, takes on a whole different other meaning.
Right. It is too, and just I think the limitation with something like this, especially when I'm trying to write, these persona or letter poems from the perspective of my parents, just the limitation of language and trying to personify that voice. But none of the asks in this poem are unrealistic yet big at all. It's the speaker saying, or the poet, because I wrote it, type thing. this is how I wish it was, or that we could have this sort of tenderness between us. But like, they're not big ass. The mother still is having health issues in here. The town is still, falling apart, all of these things. But it's just like, just even those little moments of tenderness in here. So just maybe it's even the limitations of how the speaker imagines even this relationship could have been.
Yeah. Yeah, you do it beautifully, Daniel.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Very welcome.
When you were reading it, I was like, this is just your poem now. It was such a good read. I was like, you can just have this.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's just like, as a dad, and my relationship with my dad and my relationship with my sons, I could just, because I was determined my sons were going to have, I was determined, first of all, my dad and I were going to have a relationship whether he liked it or not. That was after my mother passed away,
Right.
And there's still lots of stuff in between, like when it moved from careful on the way home, watch for deer. That's the central Pennsylvania way of saying I love you.
Yeah. Yeah.
He'd say that and I'd say, I love you too, Dad. And eventually he'd laugh and he'd go, I love you too, bud. And I said to my sons, when did I become bud? When did that happen? But that sort of softens the intimacy, by, or maybe hardens it, put some masculinity in there, bud. Yeah. It's not so dangerous. So thank you. It is that's some of the fun of it is taking somebody else's work and imagining, how should this be voiced? Is this a line break that is wanting to focus on this word, or is it a line break that's enjammed that wants to pull me into the next line? And that's part of the fun of exploring it. And I feel like for me, that's kind of my method, reading them out loud. I do that a lot when I'm reading poetry alone, and I really caught onto something. I want to go back and, no one else is in the living room and I read it out loud. Or if Brian is, I say, Brian, can I read this to you? Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's such a missed opportunity if you don't. I always ask my students, well, did you read this out loud? When they're like, yes, and they're like, no, I didn't do that. And I'm like, oh, we'll give it a shot, and they'll pass something in there. And also,
it's also a great editing tool when you're writing.
Yes. Yeah, it definitely is for redundancies. And then, the little Easter egg thing, which anyone who would see or look at this poem, it's in a sonnet format. So
yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Because we know that a sonnet can be, some sort of love thing or appreciation. So it's another unsaid sort of thing from the speaker's, father that's there, but contained.
In a way, it's a love poem of the speaker to himself.
Yeah.
Giving himself maybe what he wasn't given from his dad that he needed.
Yeah. Yeah. There is, again, when you were talking about that, love you, bud, or whatever, that sort of, it's that risk of getting too close. And now that we're talking about it, I see that happening here, but I smile thinking about you mouthing Johnny Cash last time you were here, and it's getting too close. Everything is muddy right now, bringing it back to the landscape, to the town, which I adore about rurality and people from these spaces, that we need to bring it back to, because the things that we're going to talk about are where we live, which is a form of sort of tenderness. And even at the end, so we'll pay for something we never see, the speaker is still being anchored and pulled back to this landscape. But yeah, so it's interesting, and I love that you say that, the way that it's kind of, it's the speaker talking to themselves, obviously, with it. What's interesting is this poem is hard to pin down. And going back to talking about submissions, I sent this one out forever, and people didn't seem interested in it. This was one of those ones, that I kept sending out there. It was so different to my other work. I hadn't really done the whole persona thing. This was kind of a standalone. At one point, I think it really was called Letter from Eastern Montana or something, which truly changed it. So a title change really carried the charge that this needed.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say about this one?
I love that you picked it. Yeah. I think it's that one that could, you have those poems that just stick around. I've swapped so much out, especially with the manuscript, and this is one of the only remaining earlier poems that's there. And it just feels like it's necessary. And it really also paved the way for the sort of epistolary through line that kind of shows up in this collection.
Tell me about the poem that you chose to read of yours.
Yeah, so I went through and we kind of, do you want me to start with reading it?
You can just jump right in if you want, and then we can talk about it after. I like it that way.
Okay, perfect. Family portrait featuring a Talala, Oklahoma sunset, bleeding across a late July sky like a delicious head wound. Mom is still alive, riding the turn of the century's collarbone. Dad skips dinner to work, but we know the glow from his office's window is a World of Warcraft raid. My brother is in the Tulsa County lockup for the night after stealing DVDs in the garden section of Walmart. There's a giant pool that wobbles like a mouth, spilling secrets when my sisters push the sides down. Water fills pockets in the dirt, and I scoop out earthworms, grasshoppers, and roly-polies. I've never seen the ocean, but I imagine these are tide pools. Mom says we'll move to the coast someday. Maybe we'll leave Dad and my brother behind. Thick swarms of mosquitoes open blooms like science fair volcanoes on our skin. The birds are molting, hungry, hummingbirds sucking at nectar, chickadees and wrens at the feeder, kilder retreating with a cold hot dog. Bats smudge dusk in soft pastels. Lightning bugs emerge, and Mom shows us how to softly fill a jar with eyes. The neighbors are jealous of our leftover black cats. Mom even lets me light one of the fuses. I dive into the tall grass and forget the ticks when a wail like an uncaged animal fills the night sky. Silence, then bursting of color, slipstream, like a little god spent 1,000,000 dandelion spores.
There's so much cool imagery.
And with this one, I mean, it really is kind of just, ripping off that sort of epistolary, which, I mean, we could get into a very long conversation about prose, poetry. Something like this one was, was deeply inspired by Richard Sykin's new collection. I do know some things, which is, it's insane. But the prose the prose poem, thinking about containment, sort of in the same way as that epistolary form, I'm always thinking about what happens when you let things leak out and what happens with fragmentation, especially with line breaks, stanza breaks. And this poem felt too fraught and too disparate to really try to break up. I tried with lines, I tried with different forms. But I think it's also such a great way for you to snapshot a moment or kind of try to hold things together. And that's really what this poem is trying, to work toward.
And yet you have so much music in this, maybe more so sonically than the one that I read. You've got the July sky, alive, all in that first line. I love riding the turn of the century's collarbone. But you've also got we know the glow and window as well, and World of Warcraft, those W's in there. So it's definitely got the sonically musical, even though it's not broken into lines in the same way, as the other poem.
Yeah, it's in this poem's dressed up too. I do this a lot with, and poets do this. Of course we do. We dress it up with language. And there's so much that's buried in here. Obviously the relationship with the father and with the brother. And these things are like the letter poem they're sentiments that can't be said outright and they need to be dressed up in it. But I mean, arguably this landscape, and it was, the first almost decade of my life, I grew up in Talala, Oklahoma. I think at that point there was maybe a couple hundred people that lived there. We had a water tower and a gas station down the street. You really have to look for that admiration for landscape and where you are to appreciate it, which is something that you don't really think about that much, I think, when you're a kid, because you're just caught up in everything that's happening in your little bubble of life.
Right.
So it's really interesting to try to re-enter that space as an adult. I'm almost 30 at this point.
And you describe so well the wobbly, unsupported walls of a swimming pool. I know exactly what kind of swimming pool that is. Wobbles like a mouth, and the tide pool, these are what tide pools are. Perfect. That's perfect.
I love that little pool. Yeah.
I've noticed some of your poems, you do focus on that, and not in a prurient way, on describing things as a mouth. I know there was another poem of yours I read that you were
I do
you were in it was one about emergency contact.
Oh yes.
And you talked about folding the paper in the shape of a mouth and kind of looking at the room through that.
Yeah. Mouths. Yeah. It's those things, it's the whole Richard Hugo triggering towns are obsessions, which we
Yeah.
really are. Poets are so confined, but also freed by your obsessions once you give into them. And I feel like it's the same way with language. And so mouths show up, and of course birds. There's so many birds in this collection, in this poem in particular.
And I've never seen a
fingers.
killdeer eat a piece of a hot dog, so that was good to know.
Yeah, killdeer. Yeah, and I have such an affinity for those birds that aren't the brightest.
Yeah.
And that's killdeer. Putting their
The
they'd
nest
always,
just out in the parking lot of the yarn factory up the street.
They would. We had a gravel, driveway
Yep.
in outside of this place, and they would put their eggs in there. It's perfect camouflage. And then my sister would come through to weed whack the driveways, and that would also include the eggs that were hidden in there. So yeah, but yeah, mouths. That is something that shows up a lot in my poems. Moons. I've become obsessed with moons and bones.
And other body parts here with eyes as the fireflies and eyes. That's a really great image.
I think the most in this. So many other people have talked about this and probably put it better, but it's really just that, like, looking for ourselves in landscape really is what it is. Is one of I think the easiest way to embed ourselves in, and sort of personifying or anthropomorphizing it.
I think that's one of the fun things too, though, looking at nostalgia and childhood poems, because it's easier to see that in those poems now.
It definitely is, and maybe that really is something with this poem of, like, these things can't break out of this poem. They cannot break out of this prose block, because then they bring with them all of the sort of interrogation of the present speaker or something like that. And so there are some prose poems that I have where they can't be any other form. They can't be broken open, because it then becomes too complicated and muddled by a present day speaker.
And I will have links too, because all the poems we talk about today, I think, are all available online, and I'll have links in the show notes, or if you're on YouTube, they'll be down in the description, so people can get a chance to look at the way it's presented on the page. But then you chose to read a poem by somebody else that is shaped very differently.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
By Ocean Vuong, a surprising poem, I would say, called You Guys. What made you choose this, may I ask?
I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
And those are the that's Ocean in general. Ocean is incredible. And I really wish that I could have made his tour, as he came through with his book. Even Emperor of Gladness is a perfect novel. It is insane. If you have not read it, I think anyone should read it. I've been telling everyone about it. They should probably give me a commission at this point.
And the things he said about, talking about men masculinity and language, about how even in whether it's sports or academic competition or whatever, you're killing it.
Yeah.
You beat him, that there's this language of violence in everything. And the way he gently bumps up against that is beautiful. I don't want to give too much of the poem away, though, before you read it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just and this is something, I think that is relevant. I also always, sort of frame this for my students to look in this way, of, like, kind of looking and measuring between how that violence and tenderness shows up in a poem, because arguably it's something that you can measure with any poem when you try to look at it, whether it's the language or the image, the rhythm. There's those moments of range of violence or tenderness that's in there.
Interesting.
And this poem by Ocean, just does that, the sort of just tonal switches that we have.
Yeah.
Should we read it?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. I have it right here. It's a little bit of a longer one, but not a prose block, not an epistolary.
So we talk about similarities and differences here.
Absolutely.
So
I got to show some range in here.
The contrast is exciting as well.
This is from his newest poetry collection, Time as a Mother, out from Penguin, and it's called You Guys. You guys. Brushing my teeth at 2 a.m, I say over my shoulder, you guys, I'm serious. What are we going to make of this mess? My voice muffled with wintergreen foam. What are we going to do now that it hurts when I look at those I love, like you two, you who have been through so much together, the thick and skin of it. I'm proud of you both, I say as the foam pinkens through my lips. I'm told our blood is green, but touches the world with endings, my name, a place where I've waited for collisions. You guys, Are you listening? I'm sorry for being useful only in language. Are you still with me? I ask as I peer into the tub where I place them gently down, the two white rabbits I'd found on Harris Street, the way back from Emily's, where we watched American Dad on her mom's birthday. Her mom, who would have been 56 this year. We ate Rocky Road in bowls with blue tulips. I'm too tired, she said, to be this happy. And we laughed without moving our hands, perhaps. The rabbits are lovers or sisters sometimes. It's hard to tell gender from breathing. Earlier, I had scooped down from the pavement. They were crushed, but only kinda. One had a dented half face, the other's back flattened like a courage sock. I cradled them wetly in my sweatshirt. But now the tub is a red world, save for the silent island of fur flickering in my fugitive words. Guys, I say, just wait for me, all right. Just wait a bit longer. I swear I'll leave this place spotless. When I'm done, I say, reaching back to my wisdom teeth, forgetting it's been 4 years since they are gone. No punctuation in there. Yeah, very interesting in there. No punctuation whatsoever on the page. Yeah, kind of for people actually seeing the video, it kind of just scatters across the page.
And if you look at it on the link that I'll give, is I think it was originally published in Granta.
Oh, okay.
And there are a couple of little differences that I didn't notice until I heard you read it directly from the book.
As in the poem has changed a little bit?
Just some minor little edits. And that's always fascinating too.
Yeah.
So
that is interesting with it.
To see the differences, like he switched out, it's hard to tell sex from breathing to it's hard to tell gender from breathing in the book, apparently.
Oh, okay.
So interesting. And it works both ways, I can see. Different, are the rabbits lovers or sisters? It's hard to tell. And not just it's hard to tell the difference, it's hard to tell gender from breathing or sex from breathing.
Yeah.
And if you've I raised rabbits when I was young because, a rural thing, I guess. I built my own rabbit cages and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, huddling together. And it's so surprising because at first I'm thinking, he's hanging out with, they all must have been out partying or something. He's brushing his teeth at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And at first I'm thinking, is this like siblings, parents? No, it's 2 a.m. and he's talking to you guys. So they must be friends of his. They must have been out. And he was out. But who he's talking to are these two rabbits that, it turns out, are more damaged than I thought.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't just pick up two stray rabbits. I mean, they were hurt.
Yeah. It's shocking as you go through, and it would be so easy to give to the reader, quicker getting to those rabbits that are in it. But we stop where I place them gently down, the two white rabbits I found. Then we move to that moment with the friend and the sort of consoling her after her mother prematurely died. And then we really don't.
Yeah, because we're having on her mother's birthday, but then it's like, who would have been 56? So he doesn't reveal everything at first.
It just, the folding in here is so it's astounding. I mean, this is the poem that's going to stick in the back of your mind and until you die and then beyond.
Yeah, and you don't even realize at first, like he's brushing his teeth.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it that led me to believe? Oh yeah, as I say, as the foam pinkens,
Mm-hmm.
you realize, oh, he's brushing his teeth. He's either got very sensitive gums or he's brushing his teeth so hard he's made himself bleed.
Right.
Because then he goes into the blood is green but touches the world with endings. My name, the place. Foreshadowing.
Oh yeah.
Of what else is there in that tub.
It is. I mean, it's such a great. Yeah, the foreshadowing in here is fantastic. I mean, it's surreal and even somewhat horrific when you realize that both of the rabbits, you're like, oh, it's kind of strange that there's just two rabbits just chilling in the tub. Like maybe he found them. People do, and it's such a real thing too. For you. I mean, it was such an issue where I grew up along a major highway where people would just dump, their cats and dogs and also rabbits. And so you would see 50 rabbits, white ones and spotted, and just, they weren't
aren't natural. Yeah.
Yeah. And you would just see them out there. So yeah, maybe he did pick up two rabbits and then bring them back. But there's that sort of notion, and this is what I'm talking about, of trying to toe, that line between tenderness and violence, of trying to hold something after the fact. And so holding that friend's, grief with it, holding the rabbits after they've already been massacred and trying to give them some sort of to console them when it's impossible.
Hard to tell gender from breathing.
Yeah,
Then you
absolutely.
realize when you look back at it after more is revealed, and you like, there's that almost desperate, hopeful. Are they still breathing? Are they? You
Right.
know.
Yeah. And then at the end there, I'll leave this place spotless when I'm done. Like trying to, this place. Obviously, we're talking about the world. Something like that. Reach back to my wisdom teeth, forgetting it's been 4 years since they're gone, and so it's like, gosh, like life just moves so fast, and that grief still manifests its way. It's something that you can always count on.
I mean, the poem is a trip, and I think one of the things it really has in common, as I was starting to say, it looks so different on the page from, say, the prose poem or the sonnet that we looked at.
Sure.
But one of the things that really connects it, I think, in a way that I didn't expect, was that concept of what isn't said, or maybe what isn't said yet,
right,
or what is left unsaid that you have to imagine. And he does it in a very different form, in a very different way, as well as those interesting lines that happen, because if it were punctuated, it would sometimes happen in the middle of a line. I think it like the rabbits are lovers or sisters sometimes. That if you had made that a period after sisters, then it would be sometimes it's hard to tell sex or gender. Hard to tell gender from breathing. It's one of the things that is so cool about poetry is being able to say a lot of different things in the smallest amount of words, or the space between words, you know. And so when you read a line just on its own like that, sometimes when a line lives on its own in a very intriguing way, even separate from the next line, or from the sense of the whole. The rabbits are lovers or sisters sometimes. The tub is a red world save for the silent. You know what I mean? And there, that opens it up to be something bigger than just the tub.
Yeah. And on the page where this is originally published, it's a single stanza, right? That goes.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a little bit, I mean, just thinking about how, especially with how long this is, because in this book it spans 3 pages. So the fact that you sort of have to make that movement and keep, it's jarring and it's overwhelming with no punctuation, and this sort of, you're not supposed to be grounded in here, and it's supposed to be overwhelming. And the first time I read it, I had to go back through and read it again because it just was so fast.
And it adds like almost a surreal Frank O'Hara breathlessness to it without the punctuation.
It does too, and
but
also
at the same time, oddly slows you down because you're trying to figure it out where that punctuation might be.
Even though this is not something I've read out loud before, so like trying to figure out where you would even try to take an actual breath as you move, because literally you would not take a breath until this poem is done. You would need to be like Michael Phelps or something with it. So just trying to figure out how to read it, and it just the disjointedness, but also the way you talk about that with the you guys. We think that this is like everyone's stuck in in the bathroom.
Hey, you guys, what are we going to do with this mess?
What are we going to do with this? They've come back from a party. The speaker's brushing their teeth. When you're drunk, you do the oddest things, and you got to, watch out for your dental hygiene. And then just, the unveiling, that sort of unveiling to the violence or what's happened, left in the tub. Oh, this poem it's just so good.
And I was reading an article in the Williams Record. I am assuming the Williams Record is a university magazine, I believe. And this was written by Lily Goldberg when she was talking about him reading in November of 2018. And she says, Vuong spoke on his desire to get away from the forward momentum expected of artists at all times. Upon answering a question about his poem, Daily Bread, Vuong discussed the artistic process and the importance of waiting for things to come. This poem comes from the idea that you can stay still and still do work. And that made me think about, oh my God, so often in these little conversations, I end up ending by saying, so what are you working on next? And I remember reading something else about that recently, and I thought, oh my God, I don't mean that as pressure on anyone.
Right.
It's just, we only have like half an hour or so that we're talking. And I know, maybe you're promoting a book, or maybe somebody hasn't put out a book yet, or this doesn't specifically have to do with that poem, but the expectations, maybe? I don't know.
I love that. I think that, this applies so well to this poem because, again, we don't get to know what's happening with the rabbits, the image in there. Asking a reader to stay for 3 pages is a lot. You know, thinking about attention span of things and how we have now reels and these short things, we have, poems that are formatted for Instagram and sort of to be digestible. And there's even the stigma of like, if you write a poem that's over, a page or something, like you're cutting down on your chances of it getting published or something. And there's all, the stigma of that too.
We've all counted lines when you're sending things somewhere.
Absolutely.
They want it this long.
Don't send a poem that's more than 19 lines or whatever. And I talk about this so often with other poets, and I also feel like it is gendered in a way of where needing permission to move to a second page. Or feeling like you need permission when it's literally our own poem, our own language, our own words. But I do feel like it is very much a gendered thing too. If you look at male, female poets, and then obviously, when we're looking at it, historically or something, obviously that landscape has changed a lot with, trans and non-binary poets and stuff. But yeah, I feel like it's so interesting to need to feel like you need permission to move to that, to that second page in there. And so what Ocean's talking about, I love that, staying in a spot, but doing that work unfolding just like this poem in the bathroom makes so much sense. It doesn't really move anywhere else per se.
There's a something Taoistic about that, waiting for it to come or working with the flow of something rather than trying to force your will upon it.
Right.
But I think the expectation for output as well as answers and conclusions, or, okay, you've done this, what's the next thing? And again, in those digestible quick chunks, like you said, where they're saying, oh, you got to post reels daily and all of that. Of course, all those views on Instagram for the podcast don't necessarily always translate into, downloads and listens to the podcast. So if you are listening to the podcast, please like and follow and all that stuff. So I should put in some more commercials in the middle.
They already got you. They already got you.
Oh, so what else did you want to say about this before we close things up? We could talk all day. I'd love it.
I just love, just the moments, where they slow down, Emily's where we watched American Dad at her mom's birthday party. I just think it's,
and you've got that sort of summer celebration that in there as well.
Yeah. Bowls with blue tulips. I'm too tired, she said, to be this happy. So like, especially when you're supposed to be grieving or whatever those rules are, whether it be, religious grieving or your own personal thing. And you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be crying right now. I'm not supposed to be happy. Grief is such the way you measure it is such a strange concept. And it's so isolated as well, because when you're the one in it, you keep it, you stay with it. Yeah. And so, the people, the friends or family, whoever it is that check on you for those first few weeks, that's sort of the customary, type of thing. My family's Jewish, so it's a little bit different as far as like sitting Shiva and things like that. But yeah, the way that you sort of sit with it and will sit with it for the rest of your life, I think this poem really shows that.
That's an interesting, and he never does fully say, I suspect these rabbits are no longer alive. But he doesn't really say that. There's the evidence of blood in the color of the water. There's the description of the one with the sort of looks like maybe broken back and the other one with the face. And at first, I'm reading it hopefully thinking, like when I raised rabbits, like, oh, mini lops, they have like a pushed in face. But then I realized it's worse than that. And so in a way, it's interesting that you bring up sitting Shiva. In a way, maybe he's doing that in this poem, sort of, and the rabbits are standing in for something else, somebody else.
It's hard not to imagine it as being sort of something that is like grotesque, because I very much read both of these rabbits have been run over or something, dented, and what does it say? The line in there, which I had to look it up before, and I had this whole conversation with my partner about it with what is it? They were crushed, but only kinda. One had a dented half face, the other's back flat and like a courage sock, which I had to look up a courage sock because I thought it was something else.
What is it? Because I didn't actually look that up.
I thought it was going to be something to do with I thought it was I don't even know why, like a cum sock or something, American Pie or but I looked it up, and they're these literal flashy socks that men with suits wear that say you are brave and you are proud. And I was just what? I was it was hard to take seriously. If you wear courage socks or anyone else does, it's no judgment, but I'm I don't think I'd be which is so interesting. And I'm not sure if obviously that was the intention, with ocean in there. But what do? You have these 2 dead rabbits in your tub. If they were alive, you have to keep them alive. You have to feed them. You have to bring them somewhere else. But the fact that they're dead on the road, he picked them up, brought them back and put them in the tub. So many of those other things, when we think about it, it's not even ethically, it's like in a sanitary level, it's these things that make you like involuntarily cringe at it.
Well, it's very, if Edgar Allan Poe had more empathy in his work, you know what I mean? It's very, very that.
Right. And
you get a little bit of Bates Motel feeling.
It is. It really is.
It's this intimacy and love. And I apologize, Ocean, if that doesn't sound like a compliment. I mean it as one.
It really,
because
definitely
it's intriguing.
does, though. And this is something that I think some of my maybe more surreal poems try to do in general. Mm-hmm. And the one that you were talking about us possibly reading with the toes that are in there, my partner hates that poem. She's like, she's like, the toes rattling, it bothers. But like, I kind of want to write more like horror poetry. I want to write more like, I haven't come across like a lot. I mean, obviously we think about Edgar Allan Poe and these different things. These sort of like, horror-esque, ways. And I really see that sort of operating in this poem. Like it's kind of awful that they're dead and they're crushed and they're in the tub. And then there's the question of like, what do you do with it? But then the speaker's holding them in his shirt and he's trying to hold his friend's like dead mother. And like, that's so tender.
And he's even asking, you guys, what are we going to do with this mess?
Yeah.
Both literally and of course, figuratively, maybe with, his friends, but his friends, the mother, but also in a broader sense, my life, this life in general,
Yeah.
Beautiful work. Thank you to Penguin for allowing us to read it. What else do you want to say before we go? I already asked you a little bit about the book, and I don't want to put pressure on. What's your next project?
Yeah. I mean, it really is. This move to the Bay, I think, is going to be big. A move out there. I'm going to have 2 years. So incredibly grateful for the time and space. And it's finishing this book. It's getting close. This book is here, and I think it's at a point of where it does need to be contained like a prose block, and I need to work with what's in there instead of continuing to let new work leak in. But who knows? Because I fully gutted my first manuscript completely. So it may just happen again.
I know that I have enjoyed reading your poems here and there. And I was so happy you were enthusiastic on Instagram about the podcast, and delightful to have you here and be able to talk about these poems with you.
Thank you. I mean, thank you so much. I adore this. It's not even a project, this service that you're doing to the community. I love the literary community. That's the only way, that you and I obviously met. And whether it's publications or anyone reading your work or anything out there, like the only reason why that's happening is because of the community. Like I would still write, I think Chen posted about this the other day, like even if publishing didn't exist or there wasn't anything, like you'd still do it for yourself if that's the reason why you're writing poetry. But I'm so incredibly grateful when anyone ever wants to take a chance or read my work, or when you're doing a project like this and you have me on here. So thank you so much.
And it's so much fun to get a chance to hear it in people's words and to be able to, like I said, wrap your own lips around it and compare notes and just talk about, isn't it just so cool that we get to do this?
It's
how
so
freaking
cool.
Lucky are we?
Poetry
Dark
is
poetry
alive and well.
Amen. Golden age, as we said. Well, thank you, Daniel, again. And look at the links down in the show notes and follow Daniel on Instagram and all the other places. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Our first poem was Letter I Wish My Father Wrote from Eastern Montana. That was by Daniel, read as it appeared in the Shore Poetry. And our second poem, A Family Portrait featuring a Talala, Oklahoma sunset, also written and read by Daniel Lurie. That was published in Southwest Review. Our third poem was You Guys by Ocean Vuong, read by Daniel, and we had a wonderful time talking about that. It's from the book Time is a Mother by Ocean Vuong, published by Penguin Press and in print of Penguin Publishing Group, a division of Penguin Random House, LLC. Copyright 2022 by Ocean Vuong. Thank you to Penguin Press once again for the permission to read it here on the podcast. Again, this has been In Three Poems. Follow us on Instagram and all the places, and be sure to share the podcast if you enjoy listening. Thank you so much. See you next time.